Good evening, good evening, good evening, and thank you for joining us for Vow Sex and Housekeeping. I'm Damon Rich.
I'm Tamika Rich.
And we thank you for joining us. We are in the home studio this afternoon. It's still under construction, doing some upgrades to it. But we are glad.
I was going to say, as are we.
As are we, right? What is, I know, I was thinking something like.
What happened?
I look a little dark. So I was trying to figure out why in the world do I look so dark here? And I remember why.
Ta!
There we go. All right. I knew I looked a little dark. I know I'm dark, but good gracious.
You said, let there be light.
Let there be light, right? So, thank you for joining us today, this evening. Listen, we want to get into a discussion, a topic that I think you kind of brought up and was on your mind, and talk about, just introduce the people a little bit to it, and then we're going to step away and come back.
Okay. So we're going to introduce the topic. I don't even know how to introduce it, but I'll go into it a little bit. So I was listening to something, and this day and age, of course, we all are a little more aware about ourselves and therapy and counseling and coaching and all of these things. And so even though we know those are important when you're looking for your spouse, or your spouse is looking for you, depends on which way that goes. But there is no perfect, and the thing was, look for someone that's whole, of course. And I agree with that. But here's the thing, we're not always, or you're not going to be completely whole. I don't think necessarily when you meet your mate, but there are certain things that you should look for, talk about, and discuss. And we'll get into those things in just a moment.
All right.
Vows, sex, and housekeeping. Join the conversation. This is what you need, and let's go.
All right, we're back. So we're going to talk about this journey of oneness, this journey of becoming. And as Tamika was saying before we went to the intro, there's this perception that has become, or it's the new thing. Make sure when you marry someone, you're marrying someone who's whole, right? And I think that the way that is said is maybe a little misleading.
Right.
I think that and you and I were talking about this a little bit. I think that it's a little misleading. I was just thinking about some stuff the other day. I think by today's standards of what we tell women, tell men, how we approach relationships today, if that same advice was given to you and possibly to me, we wouldn't be married today. And let me dig into that a little bit, right? So the man that someone may see today is not the man I've always been.
Correct.
Right? That's in every facet. My spiritual growth, my physical growth. I was a little slimmer. My intellect, intellectual growth, my emotional growth, my financial growth. I mean, when you met me, I was making $6.42 an hour. We tell a woman of today, or I don't know that I would tell them, but society today would tell a woman of today, no, honey, run away from that real fast. Right. So starting at making $6.42 an hour, and of course that could go a little further than it can go today. Right. But just if I were to do that,
and we know no one makes that amount
$6.40, I think it's 45 cents. Let me not short myself them 3 pennies times 80 hours times 26 pay periods. I would have been making just a little shy of $13,500, right?
Right.
And I think when we got married, I hadn't moved to Heritage yet. No. When we got married, I was making maybe $7.25.
Right.
because the minimum wage went up or something like that. I might have been making like $7.25.
Well, this is funny because I remember us filing our taxes like the first year after the first year married together or whatever, and I remember being in that particular place in that tax office, and I don't know if we're supposed to promote them or anyways, I was in there and I remember as our combined, I think it was like $18,000, and the lady was like, "Oh my goodness, that is good," and I'm looking at her, I was like, "Okay," like, for two people, right? So
18,000. It had to be like 24. I thought
no,
it
it was
24.
like 18.
No, because if I was making 13, then you was making less than me, and you was actually making more than me when we first got married. Because you making like $9 or something, and you was working 2 jobs. No, you weren't. You had stopped the one, I think, maybe.
Partially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't much.
Right. It wasn't much.
It wasn't
and
much.
I don't know why 18 sticks out in my mind. I just
It might
thought
have
I
been
really
18,
heard.
but
And she was like, "Oh my goodness, that's really good." And I was like, "Okay, yeah."
yeah,
That's not gonna
$18,000 a
work.
year. That ain't gonna work.
Right.
Not-
But it did then. So we
yeah,
thank
not
God.
being married. Yes, we thankful to God, but not being married or being married and only making that much money.
Mhm.
Even if you adjust it for inflation, say 10%, right? Since that time, you're talking about of $18,000. That's only $1,800,
Mhm.
right? That it would increase. So I mean, like it would be mad crazy
Mhm.
for you to think. But the point is
Right.
that at that age, and if we come to this day and time, you tell a young lady, or you might be tempted, or the advice that a young lady might receive in this day and time would be run from that.
Mhm.
Right? Don't get in no relationship. Definitely don't marry him until he's making more, because now everybody wants the high value man and the six figure dude, right?
Right.
And I want to go out on a limb here. After 24 years of marriage, I am a high value man and have always been a high value man, but not based on money.
Yeah, your income. Right.
Not based on income, right? The income starting to catch up to the character. So yeah. Anyway,
Mhm.
but you think about that in that conversation. The advice would be different.
Mhm.
But moving away from like that physical thing, getting
Right.
into the emotional part of it. Oh, you should marry someone who's whole. And me and you were talking about this, that wholeness thing
Mhm.
is somewhat a myth. There is a truth to it,
Yeah.
but I think it's being over exaggerated. Jump in there
Mhm.
on some of the stuff like you were talking about and how we sparked in this.
Right. I was just saying that, of course, over time, we all have our work to do. And as we're becoming one, there's individual work to do as
Mhm.
well. And that's, I think, what we should talk about the most.
Right.
For people to make sure you do your individual work while on this journey, as the two are becoming the one.
Yes.
Because you are still individual, and it makes the two becoming the one so much better as you do work on yourself and whole. Of course, on every generation, you want it to get better and better. So that concept, I understand.
Right.
So we want our children to start off in a better place, but even starting them off in a better place and making sure they have counsel and they're working on their individual selves as a whole, there is still going to be something there.
Yeah.
There's still some brokenness there. There's still some things there that they're going to need to work on, and they will not be a complete whole person going into a relationship or into a marriage. And so, and it depends on age, I think, a lot of times, because when you're talking to people, and if you're doing your work and say, hey, we get married, or you get married in your 30s or 40s or whatever, you've lived some life, you've had some experience. So these things you've worked on just a little bit. Someone 18 or 19 years old getting married or whatever, they're going to be as whole as they can be at that moment and at that age,
Okay.
if they're working towards it, if they're if they have that structure there.
You changed that up a little bit from when we talked the other day. You must figure out how to put it, because
you're
just
gonna how to articulate it.
You're gonna be as whole as you can be,
Right.
at that age,
yes.
right? You're going to be as whole as you can be at that age. Because I would tell you, and we were having this conversation, right, is you can be 100% whole as a single person, and still your incompleteness will show up in marriage, because marriage is a fire that draws out the areas you didn't know you still needed healing in.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So I want to, because I think there's degrees of wholeness. There are people who are, and I'm going to use ladies from a daddy issue perspective, right? There are people who are ladies who walk into relationships that they believe they are whole as it relates to their relationship with their father, even if they had a good father, right? In relative terms, they walk into that relationship and they find out potentially that they had some gaps in their healing concerning their father, and may have not even addressed it because they really powered through it and got through that. I don't need my dad. I'm an independent woman. My husband gonna love me, blah, blah, blah. And you don't even realize that that's unwhole language, right? But when you get in that marriage and your husband starts to brush up against scars or wounds that the father left, then that's a whole nother ball game. Right. That's a whole nother ball game, because I think that becomes, that presents its own. And the same is true for a young man with mother issues. I was talking recently, and I think I've said this online before, is that my mom has always been a hero to me. But it wasn't until recently, I'd say in the last 6 months or so, that God told me I had to reconcile with the villain of her. Right. I had to reconcile with the villainous part of my mom. And to me, that was like blasphemy. This woman who went through so much and sacrificed a lot for me to have and be in the positions that I'm in today. How dare me look at her having any villainous part?
And I'm glad you said that, because as you learn when you go to therapy and counseling and coaching or any of these things, that is like the one thing that kind of keeps you from your freedom or your breakthrough, because you feel bad, or there's a guilt or a shame that comes along with you trying to be free, and it's exposing some of the imperfections of your parents or of your loved ones growing up, or whoever. And it's okay, because it'll be the same for us, that it'll show up.
That mic a little more in front of you.
That it'll show up for our children, the imperfections of us. So a lot of times it's hard, because you go in, and it's so important that you do it. And it's a lot of things that we deal with that we aren't even aware.
Don't focus on the mic.
Okay. Aware of. And so when you were talking about these things, there are so many things that as you talk about wholeness, or you feel that you're whole in a certain area, definitely marriage will bring those out, because you're not even aware of certain things. And as you evolve and grow as a person, and mature as a person and an individual, you'll find out these things. And so when you go to counseling and therapy and stuff, and you get the tools that you need to make yourself even more aware, or break open, or dissect some of the things that you've gone through, or haven't gone through, but you're headed there, that you realize, oh my goodness, these things really have affected me. And if I don't deal with them now, it'll even affect me more, or make it more difficult in my future.
Right. I hope we get the opportunity. I don't know that we ever will get the opportunity, but I was teasing with you the other day. I was like, I wonder what type of villain I will be when my children go to therapy. Like there's a villainous part to me, and it may be that they didn't comprehend, they didn't understand.
And perception, because everybody has their own perception of whatever it is.
Yeah, I think definitely learning about, or God revealing to me and helping me deal with the villainous part of my mom. Some at this age, it's better for me to deal with it now than to deal with it before, because I think that I would have maybe reacted differently.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So dealing with that part now is important.
Right.
And I can fully love my mom, even though she's not here, in her completeness,
Mhm.
in her villainous,
Flaws and all.
in her heroics.
Mhm.
Right. I get to love her as a normal person. I get to love her as a hero. I get to love her as a villain. I get to love the whole her.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't necessarily get to love the whole her when she was here, because I was at the altar of hero worship of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And to think anything less than
Right.
was blasphemy. But
Right. Or
but you
unheard
go
of.
through that, and
Mhm.
that all of that impacts. Me and a good friend are in the process of writing a book from like an older husband, younger husband perspective. And that's one of the things we're like exploring
Mm-hmm.
those things that, like, the first chapter of the book starts out really looking at the things pre-marriage that help shape our ideas of marriage. And me and you were
Mm-hmm.
talking about this the other day. This is where I'm growing into my another level of transparency. If you've ever dealt with me before, you know I'm very transparent, but I'm growing into this another level, another season, another depth of
Mhm.
transparency. The more I heal, the more I grow, the more I mature, the more I gain perspective. I always tell people that time doesn't heal all wounds. Time gives you perspective,
Mm-hmm.
which allows the wound to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Agreed.
So time doesn't heal all wounds. Time gives you perspective even on your wound, because your wound could be very healed, but if you hadn't taken the time to properly assess it, it still looks bloody to you.
Right.
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 And so when we were talking, and I was like, you know, some of the things that shaped me before marriage, I mean, as teenage boys, we run around on the block and people giving us things to work with to go trick it. As young, go over there and get your little piece, you know,
Mhm.
and we trick it or doing whatever
Right.
just to go get a little piece, right? And so at an early age, you learn in that it ain't even that trick is there to get you off. She ain't trying to get nothing out of it. She just trying to get what you got in your hand
Mhm.
for her. So you are immediately learn to objectify women or degrade women. You
Mhm.
immediately learn to make sure that your satisfaction is the focus. There's nothing you can do in there and go in there and satisfy that woman to where she's like, "Ooh, I want you to always come back. You don't even need nothing in your hand the next time." That's not why she's there. Her motive's not there.
Right.
Right. So a lot of that programs you.
Mhm.
Pornography programs us a lot as young men. I know it hits the young ladies. I think it hits differently with young men. Pornography programs us. The relationships we find around us, sometimes one of the things we see is, hey, you're supposed to go to work,
Mhm.
bring home everything you need to bring home. Your wife need to shut her mouth and be happy about it, right? And as long as you come home every night and you don't be messy out in the streets, everything should be fine,
Mhm.
right? Thank God I didn't take that one in. But all of those things, all of those
That were planted.
perceptions
Mhm.
are planted, and they shape your perception of marriage. And although, because I don't want somebody to look at it and think like, oh, you think you better. No, although I didn't take part of that part, it still becomes a struggle because you have to learn not to cheat.
Mhm.
Because every inclination in the schoolroom that you sat in says that it's your right to cheat as long as you're taking care of the house.
Mhm.
Right?
Right.
So all of that you bring in, and it starts to shape you for marriage before you even enter the idea of marriage.
Right. Because so many things, and I say this all the time, that you are definitely a product of your environment. And I'm not saying you literally, but us people,
Yeah.
as individuals, and you are. And a lot of times you don't realize how much so until
Yeah.
you start to like go through life and experience some things and do some things and wonder why you've done some things and where does all of these behaviors come from. Because you are, and as much as you don't want to be, I think a lot of times you try so hard to do the opposite instead of really dealing with it and get into the core of where it come from and why you
Yeah.
do it, and then intentionally unlearn unlearn it or change and go a different path from there when you're made aware.
Yeah.
And through life, we're always being made aware of something
Yeah.
that's there. You
Yeah.
know, so definitely giving the advice that you want the person to be as whole as they can, but still, and we talk about this as much premarital counseling, because it depends on, again, who you got it from, what perspective and what they gave you, that you do and go through. There's still going to be challenges and things in marriage that you aren't really prepared for.
Yeah.
But we can tell you as much as we can, but it's you have to experience marriage for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I was going to also say that when you sit down to talk or to get to know each other,
Yeah.
You don't just tell someone everything about you in those times of courting or dateship or whatever. So there's plenty of things that they don't know about you, that you know about yourself, and some of the things you don't know about yourself.
Mhm.
You know, and a lot of times, of course, those things come up. Like you said during our marriage, what did you say? How did you say it?
What? The
Almost
fight?
like the mirror,
Yeah.
of the things that the spouse pulls out of you, and not in a harmful way, but things that needs to be refined.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think one of the arts of marriage, the realities of marriage is that your spouse, and you use that term mirror, and we've talked about that before,
Mhm.
is your spouse becomes almost a constant trigger
Mhm.
for unhealed damage, trauma, challenges, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
Your spouse becomes an unintentional permanent trigger because your spouse is reflecting back to you, because you're supposed to be a part of each other.
Mhm.
That a lot of times you have issues with your spouse that are actually issues you have with yourself.
Right.
Right. You have issues with your spouse that are actually issues that you have with yourself. And because you have those issues with yourself, it's easier to hit out than hit in.
Mhm.
It's easier to hit out than hit in. And so when we talk about becoming, and listen, feel free, drop a comment down there if you have a question that you want to ask us and you want us to answer live on air. We will do that. We'll be looking for your comments.
Yeah, become part of the
And grab it,
conversation.
become part of the conversation, right? So listen, so I want to just give I was sharing with a friend earlier,
Mhm.
and I don't even know where I got this from, but I think it's during a conversation with some brothers. And this is a thing that came up. Women typically get to come into the marriage
Mhm.
as they are. Men have to come into the marriage expected to change. A lot of times we hear more from the woman, well, he got to take me as I am.
Mhm.
But that man he need to change and become who I want him to be. Which is bullcrap. It's BS, right? But I think it's a reality.
Mhm.
And so from the day that man comes in, it's change, change, change. Take me as I am, but change, change, change. And I think that largely women are unaware of that. I believe, I'm trying to give women the benefit of the doubt here, that largely
Right.
women are unaware that that's how they walk into the relationship,
Mhm.
and how deflating it is. And y'all know I stay talking about the side chick winning, not because I'm trying to do that, because in reality she's not winning, but there's some realities that come along with the side chick, or why she has the appearance of winning. I was just listening to Jasmine Sullivan about oh my goodness, it's one of my favorite songs by her, with her and oh my goodness, what is the name of the song? Oh man, I gotta find the song. Because I'm not gonna, because I wanna read the actual lyrics
To get to your point.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to read the lyrics to it. Let me see. What's the name? Oh, it's her and her Girl Like Me. And oh, I ain't gonna play it. Let me see if I can get the lyrics. She started the song out. She like, I made a profile on Tinder since you left me to be with her. I think that means I'm getting desperate. Wish I could return the sender. But you don't love me no more. I don't even know what for. Knew it was real when you blocked me. I was sitting at home judging my body, wondering what I did to lose you, and why in the hell you ain't choose me. Why you don't love me no more, right? And she's going into this, and the reason in the hook on the song is it ain't right how these hoes be winning, why they be winning is kind of the hook. No hope for a girl like me. And so some of the times the reason it seemed like that hoe be winning is because she doesn't require him to change. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, right? There's a bunch of reasons why. She usually listens. She's usually, she has a different perspective on some stuff, blah, blah, blah. She usually is there to serve him. She's more submissive, whatever those things are. Right. But a lot of it is an illusion because she doesn't have to deal with him full time. Exactly. But at the same time, there's a lot of truth in it that if you adjust it rightly, it brings us like, oh, these are some things like I need to address, right? Because that's why they seem to be winning, because a lot of times they don't require him to change. And again, I'm not saying that's a good thing.
Right. And that's for that particular moment in time. But it would be the same if she ended up the wife or whatever and get to see this person in their entirety all the time, because then there's always going to be some things about someone, because we don't like 100% of anything about anybody, but our spouse, that you're going to start to pick or be like, yeah, I don't know if I can live with that, or you need to change that a little bit, or you need to tweak this. And then how they go about it to get them to do it or say it or manipulate it is one thing. But when you're there for couple of hours or a few hours or a weekend and this and that, like you said, the illusion can make you look like it's something it's not.
It can, right? It can, and that's a whole nother topic. Right. That's a whole
because that's going back to courtship and dating. Same thing. You get some of that person, or you get to see that person some, but not until you move with them 24/7. Get to see the whole.
I don't see
person.
I want to be careful about that, because there is a truth to that, but I think giving that too much credence creates a problem, because it's like, if you only knew what you was dealing with. Sometimes they do know what they're dealing with, and they're okay with that, dealing with that thing, because they see a place for them to fit in, even in his brokenness, right? There's a
because they're broken.
Maybe they are. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. But, and that's a whole nother topic. I had this random crazy thought, right? And I hadn't finished fleshing it out, so y'all getting to hear the inside machinations of Damon. There's a scripture, I think it's in John 4. It says, a prophet is without honor in his hometown, right? When you explore that scripture about why it says a prophet is without honor in his hometown, one of my partners tell me I got too many brain cells. I said, because I look at almost any scripture and I can see marriage. And I said, I wonder if the same reasons that a prophet is without honor in his hometown, and it said, and Jesus could not do many miracles. There, it didn't say he couldn't do none. He could not do many miracles because they were common with him. They looked at him as common. They didn't see anything special about him. And I wonder if perhaps a husband is without honor in his own home because he's too common, right? Just this, I hadn't fully fleshed it out. It's a thought of, and this is why I say about when you talk about in the other chick and her brokenness, is that sometimes what one woman takes for granted, and this goes the other way, I know, but for one person takes for granted, that woman knows what it's like to have lost that or not have that, and so she treasures it in a way that the wife is like, this is supposed to be commonplace, right? This the bare minimum, and the bare minimum may be that I'm supposed to get a Chanel bag for Christmas, right? That's the bare minimum. Oh, baby, that girl happy with a Coach. I'm using material things to make the point. It doesn't, but I'm so not thinking about material things. Like, it could be thoughtfulness on something that the wife no longer appreciates on something. And it's like, oh, you thought about me, and that person appreciates that. And the wife's like, I don't appreciate that. That ain't, and maybe it's a difference in love languages and all that. And listen, I am not out here making cases for side chicks. Right. I am saying that there is, when I listen to the conversations that happen around those type of relationships on both sides of the fence, what I end up hearing is people feeling less than appreciated, right? Something that a woman might experience, or I've heard, is like, the guy's talking to her and she's like, well, I think you should do this. And he's like, oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to try that. And then comes back and say, hey, I did what you said and it actually worked out really good. Oh, that's great. My husband never listens to my ideas. Right? Those are things that sometimes people can overlook, and it makes room.
Right. Usually it is always the small foxes or things that, because it builds up over time. But all it is, or it boils down to, is not being intentional and giving effort. Period. Because you do become common with each other over a while. It's just natural as human beings. As you do that on jobs, you do that a lot of times. And so if you're not intentional about the relationship and serving your spouse,
you get comfortable. I like
and that's just what it is.
I like to say one of the most dangerous things that can ever happen to a marriage is to go on, forget marriage, strike marriage, any relationship. One of the most dangerous things that can happen to any relationship is to go on autopilot.
Right.
One of the most dangerous things that can happen to any relationship is for it to go on autopilot, because that means you're no longer being intentional. You're no longer being purposeful. You're no longer actually thinking. You're just on autopilot.
And that's just in life, relationships and life. That's how we become routine. So once you get to a routine, you hear people say it all the time, you get to work to your destination without even like being aware or there. You just show up because you're so used to doing it. You know, that's just how your mind takes you. And so, and now you have a lot of people, telling people or talking to people about changing up your routines. Like if you go to work this way and you're so used to going to work, change it up, go the long way, go a different route and things like that. So again, just being intentional. I think that's
important.
To always remind yourself like, hey, I got to be intentional and I have to put forth the effort to do it. And a lot of times that's what happens.
100%. 100%.
Because in the beginning, it's fun and it's new and it's, that's just like anything. Taking care of your house. When you get a new car or a new house, in the beginning, you're getting it washed, detailed house, you're getting the lawn manicured and all of the things. And then after a while, you'd be like, it needs maintenance, So do you provide the maintenance? Do you do the maintenance as you go along to keep it up so the house can continue looking new? I remember some years ago for inside anyway, someone visited the house after we had been living in it, a couple of years or a few years or so. And it's like, oh, it still looks new, or, things that they noticed about it. But that's because we were intentional about
Right.
keeping it up
Right.
and doing the things that we needed to do so it can, still look, you don't not keep it up or take care of things and then, or take things for granted or people for granted and then go, I think I'll just, trade them in
Yeah.
for a newer model or
Yeah.
a newer version.
Agreed. I think that there's definitely a lot that goes into the becoming, right?
Mhm.
So as we went through our years, our ups and downs,
And all around.
and our rounds or whatever, there were times where you're looking across the bed and you're like, I'm married to a stranger,
Mhm.
right? I used to think that was all because I didn't know them anymore. Now I've come to an understanding that it's a two-part.
Mhm.
Not only do I no longer know them, or I'm not sure who they are, but I'm also in a place where I'm not sure who I am.
Mhm.
And when you're in that kind of identity crisis of your marriage, who are they, who am I, and who are we?
Mhm.
Right? Who are they, who am I, and who are we?
Right.
I think how we typically teach oneness is like you have to be the same people. And it's like, actually, that's the thing that weakens your marriage,
Mhm.
because it isn't about being the same person.
Right. Because then you hear a lot of people say, or most people say, and a lot of times women, maybe for men too, that we lose ourselves in the marriage, or we've lost who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it I think it definitely happens on both sides of the fence for men and women, where you feel like you lose yourself.
Mhm.
But you do have to like find those three identities. Who am I?
Mhm.
Finding who I am, what I bring to this marriage, not to the table, what I bring to this marriage, what is my, hold on, X-rated word, what is my role in this marriage? What is that? Who are they? And what do I believe their role is? And do we agree on that? Like, do they agree on my role? Do I agree on their role? And where we have the difference, can we come together on that so that we can find out who are we?
Mhm.
So that we can find out truly who are we together.
Right.
Right. I think that's something that's really, really important about the who are we part is, I think you can really only find the who are we when you both get comfortable in who am I.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Because then it's like you can go forth and do your thing.
Mhm.
And matter of fact, we were having a text exchange today about some different things. And I think I put in the quote, I was like, or the text, I was like, when you're in this certain place or you reach a certain destination, then we're going to be better because we'll be able to get more in sync on certain stuff.
Mhm.
Right? Because we're not being pulled in so many different directions. And everyday life will easily, if you let it, pull you in so many different directions. And this is why I think people wake up after all their children are out of the house and say, I don't love you no more, I want a divorce. Because somebody did the responsible thing. Perhaps both of them did the responsible thing. And once the kids were stable, they said, I got to go. Because I don't know who you are. I don't know who I am. I don't know any of this nonsense. And I'm out of here. Right. And by the way, you stop caring. And by the way, you stop paying attention. And by the way, you stop being intentional. And by the way, you went on autopilot. And I did too. And I'm out. Right. Whew. I don't know if I meant to say all that, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And with you saying that, so tell me this, because I know it's a big thing for women. When you get to that certain place in marriage around that year or around that certain age for us, and you wake up and you go, who is this person? Or I don't know them, or what are we doing? Or you have like a fear or an anxiety of the kids are almost grown. What are we going to do? You know, where's that connection? And how do we get back to knowing each other, and knowing, not just get back to knowing each other, but knowing a better version of each other, you know, or
Yeah.
that the version of you that's evolved or that's growing.
Right. Here's how I want to answer that. Because we've been through, you know, and the more we get an opportunity, the more we grow and we heal, the more we'll be able to talk about some of the, you know, the crisis, the tornado F5 moments of our marriage. I don't know if I ever said this out loud, but I came to a revelation that out of a love for you, out of a love for our kids, let me say it this way, let me be plain. Our children, and this is totally from my perspective, our children saved our marriage because it created patience in me. I'm going to explain that. Our children saved our marriage because of their age when we were going through perhaps the worst, the worst storm in our marriage. Our children saved our marriage because they created patience in me. And what I mean by that is when I looked beyond the horizon, I said, I have two choices. I can stay, and I want people to catch this. I can stay and let God work on me to do my part to help heal our marriage, or I can leave and trust God to heal me and my children from the death of our marriage. And because I rathered go through the pain and the work of transforming and healing, my children required me to be patient, to let God work. My children required me to be patient, to let God work.
Now, with that being said, do you think patience is an issue or has always been an issue for you?
It's a different type of patience. It's a different type of patience. It's not the type of impatience that you may have seen or thought or felt in the many years of our marriage. It was a patience for God to work. It was a now or never moment between me and God. It had nothing to do with human patience. Human patience, in some ways, is much easier than the patience required by God, because the level of suffering and sacrifice that God requires, because you're not just being patient. Oh my goodness, here it is. You're not in human patience, you're being patient to let the other person change or transform or become. When you're dealing with the level of patience that I'm talking about, you're being patient to let God do his work on you.
Mhm.
And in the time that he's doing his work on you, you're looking out at them and saying, why aren't you working on them? And he's like, I need to work on you.
Yeah.
Especially as a husband, I need to work on you, because you know my stance on that. Because, and I tell men this all the time, and it is so unfair when I say it, but if I am a Christian husband and I believe what God's word says,
Right.
then I have to be the first to die. You've heard me say it on air before. I'm going to say it again again. As a Christ husband, I have to be the first to die. And so that patience is the patience of going to the cross. I want you to, Lord, I don't mean to preach on, I ain't trying to preach tonight, but I want somebody to think about this. Think about this thing, right? Man, it's so much God has matured me over the years. Jesus knew that he was going to die. Not only did he know he was going to die, he knew how he was going to die. It had been prophesied for years. He knew how he was going to die.
Right.
Now, how many of us, if God says, look, you're going to die on this date in a vehicle, doing this, blah, blah, blah. He give you the details of your death. How many of us we wouldn't even get in the car? We wouldn't even get out the car, out the house. We'd build up a brick barrier around our home so a car couldn't even drive into our yard to maybe hit us while we sitting in our living room. Whatever. We would try everything possible, but
prevent.
Jesus had to exercise patience in knowing that everything you're doing, Father, is walking me towards my death so that you can live in me. So,
And that does go on both sides. I definitely understand where you're saying from the husband side, but same, because he deals with wives the same way, and I've told you before about me. So yes, and as a Christian, period, we're supposed to be dying daily, but definitely as individuals in the marriage,
a lot
because what we're supposed to become is what he purposed us to become.
You are
What he has destined the marriage to be, for us to, as we talk about in premarital coaching, that return on investment, to him. So he's trying to get all of these things out of us so we become that couple that we're supposed to be.
But this is the thing. Yes, the wife has to die, but I want you to know because it's the sequence of death. The husband has to die first. Right? Jesus had to die first, and then he's like, Peter, it's gonna come a day where they're gonna take you where you want to go. You're gonna die. You're gonna this and that. And he prophesied Peter's death or whatever. But Jesus is like, but don't worry about it because I went before you. Right? I went before you. And there are a lot of things that husbands have to suffer first in order for their family to win, right? And our resistance of it, and I think about Zephora. I don't know why the other day I started thinking about Zephora. When I forget what was happening. Oh, it was a plague or something had hit children of Israel because Moses wouldn't circumcise his sons. And because he refused to do it, Zephora had to go and do what he wasn't supposed to do. So if you find a woman on the cross, it is because a man failed to get there.
Ooh, that's a word.
If you find a woman on the cross, it is because a man failed to get there. Right? That's what we are built for, the cross.
But that just talks about a lot of what's going on and how we've talked about women and the strong women and having to stand in the gap and take that place and be the mother and the father, not actually be the father, but stand in that role, and be single moms and do all of these things. And not because she necessarily wanted to, it's because she had to.
Well, yes and no.
But there are no
No absolutes.
No
I know we don't
absolutes.
believe in absolutes.
Right.
But when I say yes and no, I mean this. There are some women who are not single mothers. They are bitter mothers. They don't have to tote it all. That dad wants to be there.
Mhm.
But her mindset, whether she says this out loud or not, if you ain't want me, you ain't want the child. Screw you, lady. I'm sorry. I wasn't supposed to say that out loud. That man want his child. Maybe it didn't work between y'all.
Mhm.
Maybe it didn't work between y'all. For whatever the reason is, maybe it just didn't work between y'all, right? And so it's important to understand that, hey, just because he doesn't want you doesn't mean he doesn't want his child. Move out the way.
Mhm. And then there are different categories of
Oh
single
no, there
mothers.
there are single
and I think a
mothers.
lot of times when you say that or you put that out there, people are only thinking one way.
No, and the single mother, the true single mother is the absent father that's intentionally not present and the mother hasn't done. My mom, I can't recall an ill word that my mom ever spoke of my dad.
Mhm.
So my dad not being there was on him, not her. Now they had some history that I've learned or whatever that maybe that created something, whatever. But my mom never spoke a ill word of my dad. Even when I spoke ill of my dad, my mom spoke positive of my dad.
Mhm.
So it that was his choice,
All right.
right? But all of that again, because I want to bring this back, all of that goes into our becoming because all of those things come into shaping our marriages.
Mhm.
And we don't realize that our spouse, we don't consider what our spouses, and I think you said this a little earlier, we don't consider what our spouses don't know about us.
Right.
What we haven't told them, or maybe we told them, but
Or
even
what they haven't been transparent or been able to share, or either been afraid to share, sometimes intentionally and unintentionally. It just depends. Yeah, and then sometimes they just aren't aware.
yeah.
And until something happens, a situation or trauma or something happens, then that's when it appears or comes up.
Yeah. Well, in some things, you said something, I forget what it was I said. And you have to loosen that other thing to bring it up. Yeah. There you go.
Just a little.
Perfect.
Mhm.
I forget what it was we were talking about the other day.
Mhm.
And I said something, you was like, I didn't used to get that, now I do. And I forget what it was. We were talking about something. Like you was like, I didn't used to get that about you, but now I do. Or like, I understand that now. I didn't always understand that,
Mhm.
but now I do understand that.
Right.
And I forget what we were talking about. But I think that sometimes things are said, and
Mhm.
until trauma
It
or an
wasn't
event
about.
or something comes up,
Mhm.
you don't fully comprehend it until it's like, now I get it.
Mhm.
Now I
Yeah.
get it. Right.
It wasn't the excitement or the.
I think it was.
Was
It's
it?
something about the excitement or the lack thereof or something like that. Like
Right.
I used to didn't get it, but now I do.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. It's about me getting excited about stuff or whatever. Like, oh yeah, it was about the excitement.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like I'm not really an overexcitable person, but once I get excited about something, good, bad, or indifferent, I'm there.
Mhm.
Like if I get upset about something, once that switch flips,
Mhm.
it's it. That I'm there.
Right.
If I'm excited about something, once that switch flips to where I have an outward expression, I'm there.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot that, like, in some ways and this is true probably for both of us, in some ways you're learning me again, or you're learning
Again?
more, or learning more about me, or maybe gaining perspective on me, that like there's a certain way that I just move. It's not always the right way I move, but there's a certain way that I move that I'm principled about it,
Mhm.
and I learn from it, and I grow, and I go. So I had a moment.
Right. But that's not a new perspective.
What?
I just said it that day.
No, I'm talking
okay.
about comprehensively. I ain't talking about
overall.
just that one. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Overall.
Mm-hmm.
I
thought you were talking about that particular
No. I'm just saying that's the first time you communicated that about that. But I'm saying that just overall. So, and I've been wavering about doing a video on this alone, and I might still do a video on this alone. But I in Sunday, it just kind of sat with me. And I was on the back patio and I was writing a chapter for the book. And I couldn't write, but all of a sudden the block came open as I realized something. I've been in this place of stuckness for a couple of months. Like I'm just stuck. I was like, I don't know why I'm stuck. And Sunday, the why started to come out. Why I was stuck. If God continues to bless, in October, we will have been married 25 years. God continues to bless and grants us with life. And it hit me. And this is completely my perspective. You don't have to share this perspective. I am at the best place I have been for a long time. I am in a place where I feel good about my marriage. And this isn't to say like, the last few years there's definitely been, healing, recovery, whatever. But like, I'm at a place where I feel good about my marriage. I feel good about my life. I feel good about the vision. I feel good about the path. And what I discovered was, and I wrote it down. I wrote it down just to kind of capture it exactly. And like Wednesday, matter of fact, tomorrow is my second therapy session. I was like, it's time for me to just do a little therapy checkup, make sure I'm good. So I started my therapy again, and just a checkup. We do annual checkups for our body. We do all of that, but we don't do an annual checkup for our mental health and well-being. Yeah. So I'm like, I just
and that's all a part of self-care.
Exactly. Yeah. And is the short version of this is God shared with me that I have trouble resting in green pastures because I've been in the valley so long. That's the short version. And I don't know if anyone can relate to that, but and I think this idea has been sitting with me. God has been baking it since you shared with me the one lady who talked about the trauma of having her first $100,000 month or whatever, and how well. And I think that God started sitting with that then, because we don't often think about how blessings can traumatize us, right? So when God started to give me the visual, and you think about Psalm 23, though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I want you to understand the shadow, I'm not getting necessarily full light, and I'm in the valley because the valley means that the mountains are beside me, right? Which means that not all of the sun, especially depending on the time of day, not all of the sun is shining on me. Now imagine when I walk out to a plain field where I'm no longer being shielded, or have a shadow or shade from the valley, in the valley. Now you imagine, I'll tell you what you do. And we have a thing that we do sometimes, light alert. You go to sleep and be in a dark room, and then somebody just flip on a light unexpectedly, and your eyes are open. It almost blinds you. So now I'm in this season and in this place where it's like I've been through in the valley for so long that the thing that I've been praying for is starting to arrive. Notice I said starting to arrive. Hadn't fully arrived. It's starting to arrive. And it's blinding me. So the blindness of the full sun is the trauma of my blessing. Because now my blessing is starting to shine on me more and more and more, on us more and more and more. And there's a trauma that comes to my eyes because of the blindness, the light, because I've been shielded in the valley.
Right.
Right? So now here comes the trauma of the blessing. This is the trauma of the blessing, that I am sitting here and the light is shining. Here's the other trauma of the blessing. Something got to be wrong. Because we as a church.
Yeah, but what does that go back to? When
what do you think it goes back to? I'll tell you what God showed me it goes back to.
Oh, no.
Or part of it.
Just for me, it goes back to like just upbringing and things, and how you always hear that negative connotation when something happens good or somebody overcomes or something. It's always been so crazy to me. And then you're either waiting on the relapse, or you'll say something's got to be wrong, or that can't be right.
Be wrong. Well, it comes from, in you're in the same vein with me, is that it comes from the mentality that we've been taught, especially as believers, is, but you got to watch out for the devil. No, I don't want to look out for the devil no more. I know we got to watch as well as pray. I don't want to look out for him no more. God is doing a thing right now, and I want to keep looking at God. And I know that God is going to cover me, and there are more with me than are against me. And God, that's your business now.
Right. Because, and what happens is, and this goes back to word too, when we submit to God. So the more we submit, the more we surrender, the more we're obedient, resist the devil and he'll flee. You know, and a lot of times we, I don't know, make it harder than it is. Not that sometimes it's not. And I think one of the reasons is because sometimes we miss or don't quite understand the assignment, and it's not carnal, period. Bottom line.
Yeah. And it's not, and that's the thing. It's like,
it's
so
spiritual.
So there's the trauma of the full sunshine. There's the trauma of waiting, like, hold on, this can't be. But it's the thing that I've been praying for, right? It's like, this can't be. It's like, God's like, and wait, there's more, right? There's more that I have for you. I need you to just continue to embrace me in this, right? There's more that I have for you. Oh, okay, God. But I'm so used to things going wrong. God's like, listen, your season of valley is up. Your season of valley is up. God dog it. Somebody needs to hear this. Your season of valley is up. And God's like, and it's like, and if some did happen, just know that I already got it under control.
Right.
It's not going to disrupt your season in the green pasture. Right? It's not going to. And so I was going through this thing and I'm like, hold on. So not only that, but then I'm looking at it. And, you know, as God is saying, whatever God is saying, I'm looking at him like, okay, God, well, you're saying this and you're saying that. And now I'm afraid to like take hold of the blessing in its fullness because of this. He's like, son, you don't even have to look around anymore. You don't have to walk in fear anymore. You don't have to look over your shoulder anymore. All of that is my responsibility. You have gone through the valley. And just to be clear, that doesn't mean another valley won't come, but you'll weather that valley differently. And you're seasoned.
Right. And it just goes back to something either we said or talked about recently, just about believing and being a believer. And a lot of times we say we believers, but we really, 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 truly do not believe. Because even the word says, and we quote it and people preach it and maybe teach it sometimes, that the eyes haven't seen, ears haven't heard. And we talked about it all the time, and we do, and you get excited about it and you're in your emotion about it, and when it comes you're unprepared and you're surprised and you're just like, no, it's supposed to come, I'm waiting for it, you know. And not only that I'm in the place and I'm prepared for when it comes, so I'm a good steward of whatever it is that's coming, you know. And a lot of times, and so we believe but we don't believe.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so just when you were saying that and talking about that, and you're not the only one, a lot of times we just have these moments of, we're praying or we're believing and asking God for certain things and miracles and stuff that are happening. And I think a lot of times we're just so caught up or used to, and I'll go back to something I said the other night about the touch or the tangible things that, is more if the bill gets paid or, the rent is due and all of these things, but there's so much more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like the smaller things, and when the bigger things come that's internal, and not just external, it's hard to believe.
I want to quote something, as you were saying that, I want to quote something that the saints say, the old school saints say. They say he made a way out of no way. Notice they did not say you made a way out of no way. It says he made a way out of no way. And that's sometimes I think what God is saying, stop trying to make your way. Yes, you got a role to play, but stop trying to make your way out of no way. That's my job. Right? Like I feel the transformation, and here's a third scary part. So the first scary part is the trauma of the sun when you've been in the valley. The second scary part is looking over your shoulder because being blessed just doesn't even feel right in that first season of it, right?
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. I'm talking for me.
Okay.
Now you made me lose my thought.
Oh, I'm sorry. That it doesn't feel right in that first season.
No, it feel right in the first season. Oh my goodness. And the third part is having to continue to let go. Right? Because God is like, hey, golly, I wish I had something. Oh my goodness, let me grab this.
Are we talking about the little girl with the teddy bear and the...
No, it's like this. Like in the beginning, you had it like this. And God says, trust me. And you're like, okay, God, all right. And he's like, trust me. Okay. And you're like, okay, God. And the more you kind of let go, you feel more of the thing. He like, listen, let it go.
And what are we letting go?
Whatever our way, right? And whatever that is like, okay, God, hold on. All right. All right. Listen, son, let go. And so there's still some more letting go. And then he's like, when you let it go, I want you to notice that the amount of blessing I'm sending is proportionate to the amount of letting go you do.
Yeah.
So then there's more of that letting go that I have to do. And it's like, and I'll give you, so when we went through one of the most challenging parts of it, so up until a certain point in our marriage, we had a joint bank account. All our money went into one bank account. And in the course of some of the trials is like, you wanted your own bank account, whatever. Now, mind you, you created your bank account. I was on it, but I never looked in it. And I still had my bank account. You was on it, but you never looked in it. That wasn't always the case, right? So through a series of events, we now still have those other bank accounts, but we now have an account that we both look in, right? And not only do we both look in it, you communicate with me about different things. Like I noticed $100 just went slid up out of there today. And I ain't call you about it. No, I'm dead. But we now have an account that we both look in that it ain't, a nice little bit of money goes into, and we talk about it. Hey, I need to do this or I need to do that or blah, 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 or whatever. Or I was like, hey, make sure you pull this out and put in that other account or whatever you got going, whatever we need to do, right? Money has always been our challenge about communicating. We've always had a barrier of communicating about money. But the thing that ended up happening that that took a certain level of trust building and different things that come with that, that is almost in correlation to the more I let go, not only in that area and other areas, that God is like, I'm going to continue to bless. The more you get this thing back the way I need it to look, I'm going to continue to bless. It's like, oh, okay then. I got you, God. I got you. Like,
did you say that was your issue? That's something you didn't necessarily want to do.
I absolutely did not.
Okay.
I did not.
Right. This so we're making it clear.
No. To be like, and we're transparent. I did not, because when we split our accounts, is at your request, right? And then it's like, so I'm like, oh, okay, then what done changed? Why we need to have our money back together? Blah blah blah. I'm being honest of the journey I took, and then it's like, and the thing that I know is the conversation God had with me is like, until you do all of this the way I want it done and how I want it done, I ain't gonna do, I ain't gonna do my part. And the more I did my part, the more he's like, okay, boom, okay, boom, okay, boom. So it's like, it's this growing process.
And that's on both sides. The more you are obedient to his will, his way, what he says, and that you let go of your will.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, or what do you think, like you say, making a way out of no way, when our parents or grandparents used to say that, or whatever, that he's made the way, and we don't.
Right.
And a lot of times will breaking is hard.
Yes.
And letting go is hard because you think it's right. But when you don't stay in the word and it's not there constantly remembering that his will is not ours, and his thoughts are higher than ours, and just all the things about God that makes it different, we have to surrender to that on a daily basis. And it is and it's work, and it's intentional, and you have to do it.
Yeah.
Because the more you really think about, for me, it's just scriptures that you've been reading for a lot of your life, or most of your life, or hearing preached or whatever, actually putting them in motion and doing them and applying them, and not, because, a lot of times we say, or people, and this is a simple, easy one, cast your cares on me, because I care for you, for you. My yoke is easy and my burden is light, and how much people read that, quote it and talk about it, and then are you really doing that? Right. Because you get the desired result when you cast your cares on him. He really does care for us, and these are the things that we miss, and we say we believe, or we are believers, because a lot of times what we don't, and it goes back to that tangible thing. What am I casting?
Right.
And what are my cares? And when you don't understand spiritual things, it's a little hard, because then you're looking for this yoke that is light, and it's like, where is it? I gotta see something, I gotta touch something to know that it's working.
Yes.
Or that it's real. Or that I've actually taken it off, or given it to him. And something I talk about sometimes in therapy, for me, and I like things like this, that I learned, even if you have to look crazy doing it, and you feel like you have a care or something, that you actually take it, or you go through the motion of like, here you go, I'm giving it to you. And so for me, even in your mind, because a lot of times these things are here that we are doing them, if you have to take something tangible, sort of like a God box, we call it, or I made a God box. And so what it is, all of these things that you're actually talking, or you're releasing, or you're letting go, or you're giving them to God, you actually write them down and put them in the box.
Right.
And sometimes that helps you go through that motion, or make it real to you.
Yeah.
Than just saying it or just reading it, because a lot of times you don't. There's no really follow through. Besides you just reading it or saying it. And the follow through is here where you believe it, where you actually believe it.
Right. Yeah. And this is, I was looking at a scripture, looking up a scripture, because when I was talking about like the conversation God's having with me, it's 1 Peter 3. In the first part of 1 Peter 3, verses 3 through 6. Because somebody sent me something about Miles Monroe when he was talking about a woman that's looking for her father and her husband, and I can get what the woman is looking for, but Miles Monroe took another step and say, you're supposed to be a father to her. No, I'm not, because 1 Peter 3 says that, and I love Dr. Miles Monroe. God bless his soul. As he rests but the 1 Peter 3 tells me differently, because it says that Sarah called Abraham Lord, not father, right? But there's a second part of 1 Peter 3 in verse 7 that says this, and this is where like God has dealt with me over the years of the healing process. He's always kind of made 1 Peter 3 and 7 a staple. And so when I'm saying what I'm saying, I want you to think it's not rooted in scripture, because it is, about our obedience as husbands, because he says, husbands likewise dwell with them with understanding. And I'm going to read this in a couple of different versions.
Okay.
Dwell with them with understanding, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs. In why she's weaker, while we focus on the physical, which is a big thing, there's also a scripture that says, for the woman was deceived. So there's a weaker part from that perspective, where women are prone to deception, men are prone to disobedience. That's what I say. But it says, as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. Often when this is taught about our collective prayers, right? But really, when you look at this, is if you look at it in the full context, verses 1 through 6, he's talking to the woman. And verse 7, he's talking to the husband. And he's saying, so husband, you need to treat your wife, dwell with her according to knowledge and understanding, so that when you pray to me, I'll hear you.
Right.
Now, when I go back and says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing, that's what women like to focus on. But the last part of that is finds favor with the Lord. How do I find favor with the Lord? By dwelling with her with understanding. And the favor comes through him responding my prayers, because he honors how I am treating my wife.
Right.
Right. So now that's the New King James Version. The complete Jewish version is, you husbands likewise conduct your married lives with understanding. Although your wife may be weaker physically, you should respect her as a fellow heir of the gift of life. If you don't, your prayers will be blocked. Right? So the level of respect, we always talk about respect from a man's perspective, but it says here, if you don't respect her, if you don't treat your wife right, I won't even hear your prayers, right? So that your prayers might not be blocked. Now, the Message version says this, and this is my last version. The same thing goes for you husbands. Be good husbands to your wives, honor them, delight in them. As women, they lack some of your advantages. But in the new life of God's grace, you're equals. Treat your wives then as equals, so your prayers don't run aground. Repeatedly,
right? How
I treat my wife dictates how well God will listen to me. Think about it. Listen, it didn't say your personal prayers. It didn't say, I'll listen to your prayers about your children, but anything else I won't listen to. It says your prayers.
Right.
That means that when I am not treating my wife right, then all of my prayers had the potential of being hindered. It's hindered. So it's like, God, I prayed for my child and you didn't hear my prayer. Yep, I couldn't hear. Well, I was on do not disturb with you because you wasn't treating your wife right.
Right. I just want to go back to this little part, because when you were reading that, the part about the woman being the weaker vessel, and how often that gets taken out of context, and how sometimes people get mad, or women, or about the being called the weaker part. And a lot of things in the word just are what they are. When God just talks to man like he just did in that scripture, or woman, and tells us different things about who we are and what what we will encounter or endure just as a result of the garden. Period. Bottom line. And then for how much we, I don't know, fight against it, much as we fight against it, and some of the same exact things when you get that mindset that the enemy comes in to destroy you with or deceive you with again. Yeah. A lot of times. It's just crazy. But I was just thinking about that as you was reading that, so many things that people just...
I am often...
That's meant for our good, for us to actually listen to. And
I'm often intrigued by, in this, I'm going to say this about women, and then women, y'all can come for me later. But this does go on both sides of the fence.
Oh, what is it? Because I might have to help them come for you.
Okay. I am often intrigued by the number of women, Christian women, who only believe the word of God as it relates to the spiritual things and completely ignore the practical things. Like you were just saying, they get offended that the Bible says, the word says, you're the weaker vessel. Doesn't mean you're less than, because I think that's how that's read.
Right.
You're less than. I like the one translation that says that women don't have some advantages that you as men have.
Right.
Right.
That just is what it is.
That is what it is.
And I don't want them.
Right. But that's a whole debate on the feminist side movement, whatever. We ain't going to even get into that.
Right.
But they're
and embracing my femininity.
And embracing your femininity. Yes. Yeah. Ooh, never mind. I can't wait for you to do your chat with women on Proverbs 31, because I think it's a female side to that I can't wait for you to reveal. But anyway, so the thing that I was saying is like it's amazing at the number of women who believe God for everything except for the things that say here. Right? When they say, and Sarah called Abraham Lord, I ain't calling that Negro Lord. What?
Well, for me, I definitely ain't calling him Daddy. And I think somebody, did you do the post about that, or was it Robin?
No.
Somebody. One time, I think about
don't call me
Daddy.
Robin. I ain't even want you to call me
Daddy. How do you feel about it? And I was like, that don't work for me.
Soldier go, whoop, Daddy, no,
right?
It's just but but when I think
to each his own,
to each his own, do your thing. But it is that thing. It's like is the number of women who get offended about what the word of God says about it. I believe everything but that. Also for the men who because I believe that God is trying to reset marriage back to the garden. Not what it has become, but back to the garden. There was a season. If Jesus lifted the curse, then that means marriage needs to get back to its original state where they were equals, right? There was a headship still with the husband, but there was an equality that existed that didn't exist, that ceased to exist with the fall. But anyway, so God says this thing, right? He does his thing, blah, blah, blah. Or as we read the word and it's saying whatever the word is saying, on that, is that I just think that there's a, how we as men and women neglect what the word says. Treat her as equals. Men like, like this, the word says is you can't believe that all things work together. Oh, I believe all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. I can't believe that and then not believe where it says treat her as equal.
Right.
Right? And now as I'm treating her as equal, I'm equally acknowledging that she's also the weaker vessel. I can't ignore those two things.
And I think this goes, well, for me, it goes to James being a hearer and not a doer, or don't only be a hearer, but be a doer. And this is the thing. In order to be a doer, you have to be a believer. And a lot of times we just don't believe. We say we believe. We'll hear it, we'll say it, but we don't do it because we don't believe.
Yeah.
So a believer actually makes you is that action part of the doer.
Yeah. I will say this as we
we're all guilty.
Exactly.
And we're all learning and we're all growing.
And we're all growing as we get as we get close to wrapping up for the night.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say this. It's important that as we grow in marriage, as we go into that as we continue in the process of becoming, you will not become, as long as you look at the table, across the table at your spouse, and you say, when you do what God called you to do, then I'll do my part. That isn't even how God works.
Mm-hmm.
And there are too many spouses looking across the table, knowing what they need to change in the context of their marriage, but refusing to change it, holding their change hostage, and in essence being disobedient to God, holding their change hostage to the obedience of their spouse. I remember when Tony Evans talks about how, like, he was a believer and I think his wife either wasn't or as much of a believer, but he tells that story. Normally you hear that story in reverse, but the husband, he was to her that won her over to Christ. Imagine if Jesus said, God said, I want you to go down there and I want you to give your life for these people so that they can be reconciled to me. And they said, and Jesus said, when they do their part, I'll do my part. Imagine that.
Imagine.
God, if they can go 10 years following all of the ordinances without breaking them, then I'll go down so that they never have to slaughter another sheep or a goat again. Imagine that.
Right.
We have a backyard full of sheep right now.
Right. And our excuse is, I'm not Jesus. Because we're supposed to be what? Like Jesus?
Like Jesus.
Christ
but
followers.
I'm not Jesus.
Okay.
I'm not Jesus. I'm not Jesus.
And we're not. And we're not saying you are.
We're not saying you are. But I'm not Jesus.
But that is the image we're supposed to be.
That's the image we're supposed to operate in. But I'm not Jesus. Well, bless your heart. Jesus wants something from us.
Help us, Lord.
Help us, Lord. So yeah. So I think that's it. You got anything else to add?
I think I was one thing I was just about to say. I forgot. Why I was saying that, and it was going back to belief and being a believer.
While she's gathering her thoughts, listen, we're getting ready to plan a marriage pop-up. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and this is always a part of my prayer, because we know sometimes it is a struggle to believe, or I think sometimes we think we believe when we really don't because we want to. But we have to be honest and transparent. And sometimes and I always pray this prayer, even when I think I'm believing something, but my actions speak differently. Lord, help me in my unbelief. And
help me in my unbelief.
It's just as easy as that.
That's important.
Yeah. And I was going to say to all the women that have that struggle, or that is looking across the table and going, I want to, or I'll change when he changes or whatever. Remember, you got to work on you as an individual. And if you're having an issue with that, or you want to let go, or if you have that bitterness or resentment or whatever it is has built up, call me. I am a life transformation coach, and we'll get through, help you, give you the tools you need to get through that area or that part of your life so you can be free in your marriage.
Girl, I love how you threw that little plug in. I see you.
Yeah.
I see what you're doing.
Because I've been there. So my desire is for people to truly be free. Exactly. And be the authentic person that God has called you to be. That's the person, that's the individual, the wife, the mother, all of the things.
All of the things. Not just some of the things, but all of the things. Be those things.
Now, what were you going to say, hon?
Oh, I was just saying, listen, y'all be on the lookout. We are getting ready. We are planning, trying to find our location right now to do a marriage pop-up. We hadn't done one in years. And so we're getting ready to do our marriage pop-up. And what a marriage pop-up is, and we're going to change the name of it. It's the Marriage Kickback. We're going to bring you out you're going to come chill with us. We're going to throw some hors d'oeuvres, some bottles of wine, if that's what we do, or some drinks, some sweet tea, some lemonade, whatever it is on the table. And we are going to talk about marriage. We're going to kick back in it. We're going to get real about it. You get to interact with us live and in person. And listen, here's the great thing about when we do our marriage kickbacks, there is no cost to you. You just show up. Just show up. But you're going to need to reserve your spot, because space will be limited. But
it is a judgment-free zone.
And it's a judgment-free zone, but we're going to talk real. And then we are also planning something we've been wanting to do for a while. Is I want to do this balance of the sexes. Like, we haven't done one of our seminars in a while. I want to call it balance of the sexes, because I want to get into that conversation. So be on the lookout for that. Balance, not battle. Balance of the sexes.
Yes.
And then the one thing that we have been being asked about over and over and over again, and we are starting to look into it, is a marriage retreat. It's going to be a marriage retreat like none other. We're going to all be in one house, maybe two. And we're going to live and breathe marriage for about 3 straight days. And y'all going to be sick of us, and we're going to be sick of y'all, and y'all going to be sick of your spouse, and your spouse going to be sick of you. But when you get home, you're going to love each other like you never loved each other before. So be on the lookout for that. We got several announcements coming your way from Marriage Refresh, Beyond, not Beyond Church, Vow, Sex, and Housekeeping. We are so glad. Be on the lookout. Check out my lovely bride, her life coach, transformation. Listen, wives, and those who are dating, if you're looking to get right, this woman is ready to share her authentic, transparent journey to help you be your authentic, true self. So that's coming. A whole lot of else coming out of, you know what? I didn't tell you this. I just brought a domain. And I think our spiritual mom planted this, but we own the domain Rich Dynasty. I think that's what it is, Rich Dynasty or something like that. We own a few more domains that we done got. And I am looking forward to us launching our I Still Date Her t-shirts. Those are coming out soon. Super excited about that. And that's part of our We Still Date line. So we're going to have some stuff that comes out with our We Still Date line. Listen, Marriage Refresh, we are getting more on the same page here. My lovely bride and I, we are growing, we are healing. We want to take you along on that journey with us. So till next time,
we're out.
We
love you for real.
We love you for real. Or maybe for play.
For real.
Definitely for real. Okay. God bless.
Good night.